Hello. Thank you for being at SIMBA's School of Business, Course 1. But just kind of an overview of where we're going today. Some of these things may or may not apply to you and your business. First, an introduction of who SIMBA and WSMA is. An overview of business structures. Choosing the right business structure for you, knowing that you can switch business structures at different times and where you might want to be. Business licensing, which is my favorite topic. I'm happy to direct people in what kind of business licensing they need and can usually find the answer to that pretty quickly. We're gonna do a little open book group quiz if you need a business license or not. Trust me when the answer is almost always gonna be yes. It's like selecting C on the Scantron when you were in school. We'll talk about some other kinds of licenses you might need depending on the kind of your business. If you're operating a restaurant, if you're a construction contractor. We're gonna talk about EINs or tax ID numbers. The very touchy subject of working with family and friends, and then annual renewals for businesses, and then a little bit of a review. So lesson 1 is who is SIMBA and WSMA. SIMBA is the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance, which is why I don't say that all the time. We were founded in Spokane almost exactly 7 years ago, but we work in 13 Eastern Washington counties. We're a 501c3 focused on supporting local economies, and how we do that primarily is through education for our independent and locally owned businesses. We also educate consumers on how to support local businesses and provide resources, including group trainings, one-on-one sessions, and we have a video library on our YouTube. Really everything from startup to stay up of your business at any stage. Consultations are free, our trainings are free. We do have some add-on products that are low cost, and those just help us provide these programs at no charge. Today's program is primarily funded by the Washington State Micro Enterprise Association. WSMA is a foundation or a nonprofit that funds entrepreneur support organizations like SIMBA, primarily through grants and then through some education and resources so we can do the direct outreach to small businesses in our state. They don't do grants to for-profit businesses. They only provide them to nonprofits to do education and outreach. They are located, I believe, in Olympia, but they work throughout the state and they fund programs throughout the state every year. They only fund micro-business-based trainings. So micro-business has a lot of different definitions, micro-enterprise, interchangeable, but how WSMA uses it is a business that employs 5 or fewer people, which includes the business owner. For a micro-enterprise or micro-business, the owner has to be actively involved in the business, not just angel investor. Generally, that business doesn't have access to traditional capital or credit when they're starting up. They're not taking out a second loan on their house to get that going. And usually the kinds of businesses that WSMA wants to serve are ones that require less than $50K of startup funding. We're not buying massive amounts of equipment. We're not purchasing a building to get this started. So really people with hobbies, second jobs, creative spaces, someone who's a great baker and has a cottage license and is selling at farmers markets, really kind of the bread and butter of businesses in our state. So in Washington State, micro enterprises or micro businesses employ over 600,000 people, and they make up over 85% of the businesses in our state. And of that number, the majority of them are single employee, and that employee is the owner of those 85% of businesses. And in some counties, like Grant County, it's 98% of businesses are micro businesses, for example. So it's pretty broad as to what that looks like, and it's the majority of not just our state, but truly every state. You hear other definitions of small businesses, like those used by the Small Business Association, the SBA, the federal lending arm for small businesses, and they define small businesses as 50 or fewer employees. And in Eastern Washington, 50 employees feels like a big business. So we're really kind of focused here on this, and so WSMA has allowed us to bring this program and these courses, video these courses so they're available, and do one-on-one consultations through June. So if you want a consultation on any of the topics for today's trainings or the upcoming trainings, please get on our schedules. Our staff is small and nimble, so if you want to meet with us on any of these topics, please book some time before June. So lesson 2 is our longest lesson. By all means, ask a question at any time. But we're going to kind of talk about business structures. I am going to name a bunch of business structures, but we're going to focus on sole proprietorships and LLCs because those are the most common forms for micro businesses or small businesses. So sole proprietorship or DBA, doing business as, limited liability company, LLC. Limited liability company tax is an S corporation, which is still an LLC with a slight tweak to how your taxes look. We'll talk about that briefly later. Some other common business structures are partnerships. A partnership does not have to be formal. It's just two people doing business together. There's a formal version, which is a limited liability partnership, which has similar protections to an LLC. The taxing is different, it requires quite a bit more paperwork. And then corporations or C Corps, Coca-Cola, right? Amazon, large corporations. You don't have to be large to have a corporation, but there's a ton of paperwork, a ton of structure, a bunch of other things that at the small business stage you generally do not need. So the most common business structure for Eastern Washington businesses is a sole proprietorship. And it's truly, I haven't done all the research, but it's probably the most common business structure for anyone starting a business. Because it's the easiest thing to do. You literally only need a business name, you need a business license, and if you're in the room or online, you don't have a business license, we'll talk about it soon as to why you do need one. And I think you need a business bank account. You do not have to have one, but if you're ever going to grow that business, apply for a loan, be able to provide financials to someone who's going to become a business partner, change your structure, it's really critical that you're keeping your personal assets separate from your business. Not required, but I'm going to keep that as a need. You can also have an EIN or a tax ID number, same thing, for your sole proprietorship or DBA. You're not required to have it, but if you don't have one, if you're hiring contractors or doing other work, then you are giving your social security number out to people. So better to have a tax ID number. Like I said, sole proprietorship, it is in the name, sole, one, but it allows for only one business owner. And I definitely hear from businesses that we help that have two owners that are not a married couple, that's the exception, who have a sole proprietorship. And then if that's the case, what you have is general partnership and some weird tax implications. So again, only one business owner unless you're a married couple for a sole proprietorship. It does require an annual business license renewal. In most parts of the state, there's one or two tiny little outliers. Where we are today in Colville is not one of them, but Colfax is one of them in a lot of circumstances. We learned that the hard way during a training last year. So now I know that secret. There's about 5 cities in our entire state that don't have an annual renewal. Here's why you don't want a sole proprietorship or a DBA. It provides no protection for your personal assets, period. So if something goes wrong, we live in a super litigious country, people want to sue each other over nothing, personal slights, and you lose for whatever reason, your personal assets, your house, your personal bank account, if you have a day job, your wages are up for grabs. A benefit of a sole proprietorship is you just file an individual, not a corporate tax return. It's just an additional part of your individual tax return. All the income from your business is taxable to the owner. Owners only if it's a married couple. You can take all those business tax deductions related to running your business, so you're paying less on taxes. And I'm not going to go too far in taxes today because our next training in Cheney, which is also on Zoom, is with a CPA, and it's all about business finances and taxes, and all your questions can be answered there. So I'm going to kind of just touch on it, but not really go deep into that today. And then it's a DBA, doing business as. So it's the name you use for your business if you're not using your full legal name. So even if you're using a nickname, so if picking on a business owner in here who's, I think her full name is actually Jennifer, but I know her business name includes Jen, which would be considered a nickname. So because she's not using her full legal name, she has to have a registered DBA and business license. We're not saying you don't have one. You just happen to be there and I know. LLC requires just a few more steps than a sole proprietorship, and that is truly the most common business structure that exists. LLCs have really only existed for about 30 years. There were some updates to the Washington statute in the last 5 years to make it even easier to have an LLC, which is great. It's a very simple structure. You need a business name, just like you would for whatever your business is, but the formal business name must include the word LLC with no periods, or the acronym, LLC with periods, or limited liability company in full. So I'll pick on the people recording Vexing Media. I think you guys are an LLC. So they're Vexing Media LLC is my guess. Perfect. And that is their full name, but they probably just use Vexing Media out in the world because you can still have a limited trade name. I always think of businesses that have LLC in the title as, it's always like an architecture firm or an accountant. But every once in a while you go to a store, there used to be a clothing store in North Spokane, and it was like clothing store name LLC on the window, and I just always thought that was kind of charming. But you don't have to use the full name in the wild when you're advertising your business. Like it's the Coca-Cola Corporation, but you just know it as Coke or Sprite or whatever, fill in the blank. You can use other trade names. You need to first form your LLC with the Washington Secretary of State. It is a one-time fee of $200 the first time, and then every year you have to renew it for $70. It was $60 for like 12 years in a row until last year, and I had to update my language and my slides to get this a little better. These fees are tax deductions. So your filing fee for your LLC the first time and any renewal fee is a tax deduction for your federal taxes. You have to have a business license. If you take away nothing from me today, it's that you have to have a business license. LLCs are required to have a tax ID because the LLC is kind of treated like a person. We talk about it in media a lot. Businesses and corporations are kind of treated as people. It's a separate entity, so they have to have an EIN or a tax ID number, which is literally just the social security number for a business. And I'll touch on that more later. You have to have a business bank account to operate an LLC. We always recommend folks go to credit unions, in part because credit unions have a mandate to keep money in their community and they fund things. I know STCU is really popular in Northeast Washington and in Spokane where we're based. And you see STCU signs everywhere, and every time there's like a community event, STCU stickers everywhere. So not only do they fund the community, they also have really low cost products. Bank of America, for example, will charge you just for having your money in the business bank account. And there's free business bank accounts at credit unions. The other thing you have to do, and this has been going back and forth for some time, is beneficial ownership information filings. There's been a ton of litigation. I'm going to deep dive into that a little bit, but that is the other thing you have to do. Technically within 90 days of formation. It's been going back and forth for a year, so you do have some time. The optional thing for you is you need to adopt and sign an operating agreement. Probably not necessary for a solely owned LLC, but almost every bank requires you to have an operating agreement if you're doing it. SIMBA can help you with that. Definitely need an operating agreement, or should have an operating agreement if you have more than one owner of your business, because the operating agreement basically is what happens if things go wrong and we want to sell the business, split the business, who gets the assets, who's paying the debts. I put the asterisk because the Washington law actually says you don't have to have one. You can just default to what's in the rules of how you pay debts and split assets in the Washington laws. But I've never met a bank that doesn't require one. So if you want to have a bank account to operate your business, unless you're, I guess, operating in cash only in a cash box, which feels like it's not happening anymore, you need to have it. The beauty of an LLC is that it provides complete personal asset protection as long as a couple of things are met. So your only liability or exposure is the amount of money you've put into the business. So if you started your business with $1,000, that's your exposure, and whatever's in the business bank accounts. The other things you have to do to keep that protection is keep your business and personal assets separately. So don't be treating, like if you bought a car just for your business and then you start driving it for pleasure, kind of mixing assets there. Your business bank account shouldn't be used to pay personal expenses as well. That can get rid of your protection. It's okay if you occasionally pay for a coffee out of your business bank account, but ideally, if you're making a daily coffee run using your business bank account, again, this only comes up if you're sued, then you may not have protection anymore. And then the other thing is owners don't engage in intentional acts while running the business that cause harm or damage to person or property. So an example that's easy is if you're the business owner and you own a clothing store and you physically assault someone in your store. You laugh, but it happens. We see it on social media and all kinds of places, and there's all kinds of case law about it, but that potentially would expose your personal assets because you're not protected for doing something intentionally versus something negligent. Like if you didn't realize there was a broken tile on the floor of that retail store and someone slipped and fell and you didn't know about it, you didn't try to hide it, you didn't do something wrong, then you're not personally responsible for that. The business is responsible. You can have more than one owner, and the owners can have different ownership percentages in an LLC. And an LLC can be owned by other LLCs, which is why the BOI filing that we'll talk about in a bit exists. If you're a solely owned LLC, you're initially taxed as a pass-through income, meaning all the income from the business, if you're the only owner of it, goes on your personal taxes, and you get to deduct everything on Schedule C. So you're still filing a 1040, still due April 15th. You don't have to file anything separate for the business as an LLC. If you have an LLC with multiple owners that are not a married couple, you can choose to be taxed as a partnership, and a few other structures. Partnership is the most common one. And then all the business income is split to the partners based on how much they own. So if it's 50-50, you're just splitting the income 50-50 and the loss is 50-50. If it's 70-30, same thing. It does require you to file an annual report with the Secretary of State to keep your LLC in existence. It's $10. If you don't file your annual report, and again, it's a year from when you started your business is when you file it, then the Secretary of State will administratively dissolve your LLC and you lose any personal protections during that time. And the Secretary of State starts emailing you 60 days before it's due to file, so make sure you get it done, even if it's the last day. If you file one day late, it's no longer $10, it's $180. Exactly. And then if you let it fully lapse, it can be up to $300 to renew. So just take the time. It takes about 5 minutes. Do your filing, pay your $10. That $10 is subject to increase if the legislator would change it, but it's been $10 forever. It does require annual business license renewals as well, different space. And it does require you to have a properly noticed and documented annual meeting. What does that mean? If you're a solely owned LLC, you have to send yourself a notice. It can be in an email saying we're having our annual meeting, and documented just means I had the annual meeting. It makes a lot more sense if you have multiple members to talk about what you're doing, but you have to have at least one. You can have more than one. I used to have an LLC that I was the only owner of, and you literally just send yourself an email. This is the date I'm having the meeting based on what's in your operating agreement, and then you say, we had our meeting, reviewed our financials, end of story. It is very awkward, but this piece of documentation that you have to keep annually also is part of your protection to protect your personal assets. So it's awkward and weird, but just do it. You can choose to have your LLC taxed as an S corporation. Same setup as a regular LLC, same requirements to set up your LLC. The only thing is when you apply for your tax ID number, you choose to be taxed as an S corp. What does that mean? It means you save on some employment taxes because as self-employed people, for sole proprietors or LLCs with pass-through taxes, you're getting taxed at that self-employment rate of 15 point something percent. So you're kind of getting double taxed because you're paying as if you were giving yourself payroll plus your portion of Social Security plus the employer's portion of Social Security and some other taxes. So you save on that. The owner's wages are taxed like a W-2, so all of your taxes are coming out ahead of time. It's easier to manage than a true corporation because you don't have to have a board of directors, you don't have to have a bunch of meetings, you don't have to have elections, you're still just running as an LLC. The problem is you must pay wages to the owner at a reasonable rate. So you can't pay yourself $500 one month and $10,000 the next month. You have to pay yourself a salary. So I don't recommend, and I know our second session with our CPA, the School of Business that's going to be in Cheney, don't put yourself into an S Corp unless you can pay yourself consistently. So that might be a few years in business. You can always change how you're taxed. Because if you're not paying yourself actual wages at a reasonable rate and paying those payroll taxes, the IRS will push you back into being a pass-through income. So it's really for a business that is ready to pay wages to the owner versus just taking draws. That's how you get paid as a owner of an LLC. You just pay yourself out of the business bank account whenever you want to. And for certain kinds of businesses, let's say you are an accountant, for example. They have really busy seasons where they get paid a lot of money. And then in the summer, there's like a little bit of corporate work and not much else. So they may get paid a lot in April and May when corporate taxes are due, but probably not as much in the summer. So you may get paid, you may be able to pay yourself $10,000 in March and $1,000 in April. So unless you can pay yourself consistently at least once a month the same amount, I think taxing as an S Corp is not where you want to be, but if you get there, then absolutely. And the reasonable rate is based on reasonable rate for the kind of work you do in the region you're in, which is a really hard calculation. You kind of have to guess and know. Usually if you can justify it, it's fine. But again, it really shouldn't be less than minimum wage. Every LLC, regardless of how you're taxed, requires a registered agent. And every formal business, SIMBA's a nonprofit, we have a registered agent, it's me. But you have to have a registered agent. A registered agent can be an owner of the business. It can be a trusted partner. Your accountant, your lawyer can do it. They will definitely charge you a fee for it. There are paid third parties who will do it. Northwest Registered Agent does it. SIMBA does it now for a much lower rate to support some of our products and services, but it can be you. The reason a lot of people don't want it to be themselves is because you have to put your physical address publicly. The registered agent has to have a physical address within the state of Washington. It can't be a mailbox. It can't be a UPS mailbox. It has to be a human person or a named business that can receive service of process, which is receipt of a lawsuit. That's literally their only purpose. The other thing a registered agent does, especially a commercial registered agent, is those of you who already have businesses know you get a lot of spam and fraudulent emails about this filing is due. Our board president is a business owner, and I teased him the other day because he said, I don't know, is this really from the Secretary of State from Washington? And he showed me this letter and it looked official, but the mailing address was in Florida. And the Secretary of State of Washington does not have a remote office in Florida. And it should have been simple, and he's a sophisticated business owner and has owned a business for 40 years, but scammers are getting better. So a commercial registered agent can help you also get rid of that. And you can use their address as your business address if you want to keep that private. But again, it can be you. If you're someone who is not ready to check your mail effectively once a year when the renewal is there, give it to somebody else, because that's where you're going to lose the protections. So let's talk about choosing the right business structure. We kind of talked about two of the most common ones. Some considerations, because the considerations are going to be different depending on where you are, where you live, what kind of assets you have. Ooh, these really just formatted wonky. They don't look like this on the screen. So how do you choose? So what's the nature of your business? Are you a construction contractor and you potentially are going to have someone doing roofing at someone's house who could fall? Please don't put your personal assets at risk and set up an LLC if you can. Are you just doing marketing from your house and all you have is a laptop and you're just producing, social media for someone? Maybe a DBA is fine. A lot of folks who run cleaning companies solely themselves are often just DBAs, especially if they don't own a lot of equipment, especially the kinds of cleaners who come to your house and clean with your own cleaning supplies. Industry really matters. If you have a restaurant, you don't want that kind of liability on yourself thinking about food poisoning and things of that nature, and even people who claim to have food poisoning. If you have in-person customers, you might want to think about having an LLC to protect your personal assets, because we've all dealt with the public and seen just the onslaught of bad behavior in public spaces all over social media. So if you're, in-person customers, especially if they're maybe coming to your residence, I think about a hairdresser I used to have years ago who had a salon in her basement. Probably want to have an LLC to protect your personal assets. If you have employees, you may want to have an LLC to protect your assets because employee claims are real. Whether they're valid or not, they can be very expensive. What level of risk can you handle for your business? If you, again, are this digital marketer, you're just making social media calendars, maybe logos for folks, your risk is a little lower. People get really mad and really invested about those things, but we're not talking about a huge amount of money. But again, if you're remodeling a home and someone is paying you $100,000 to get this done and it doesn't go right, then $100,000 of your own assets are at risk. What kinds of personal assets do you have? Do you have a house? Do you have cars that are paid off? Do you have a big amount of money in a bank account? Do you have a day job where you have wages that can be easily garnished? If you have kind of larger personal assets, it might be something to think about it. But if you're a college kid or you're a single mom just trying to get on your feet and just figuring it out, maybe LLC is not right for you yet, but maybe that's where you transition because you can always switch from one to the other. How many owners do you have? Again, if the owner is more than one and it's not your spouse, you can't have a sole proprietorship. Some other things. Can you be responsible for filing the annual paperwork of an LLC, which is the one filing with the Secretary of State? And if you can't, can you afford to hire someone to do that for you so you still have your assets protected? Will you remember to have that awkward annual meeting with yourself and document it? And I recommend, when I did it for myself, I would just take myself out for a glass of wine and sit there and make my notes about my meeting. Can you get that done? Can you complete a BOI filing, which we'll talk about, and I guarantee you can complete a BOI filing. If you can't, we can help you at SIMBA get it done. But if you're not someone who, I use the making candles as an example all the time. I was at an internship fair yesterday. We're trying to hire an intern, and I kept talking about explaining what SIMBA does, and maybe I could figure out how to make a candle at home. I would probably get wax all over my kitchen. I'd probably get divorced. It would be a disaster. The cats would track it throughout my house. But I'm not making something that someone wants to make. But in our community, there are a lot of really talented candle makers at all of our markets and things. But maybe your skill is that, and your skill is not all this paperwork. So if you know you're someone who's not good at the paperwork or is just not going to do it, I know some of us put things off when we have to get them done. Maybe you're not ready to be an LLC yet. Or maybe you're going to wait until you have the money to pay that person, whoever that is, accountant, lawyer, private registered agent, fill in the blank, to do that for you. So here's extra credit. Let's talk about BOI. Someone at the Department of Labor and Industries that we work with calls it the oh boy filing. So beneficial ownership information filings are required for all LLCs, corporations, and other formal business structures, not nonprofits. So if you have one of these and you haven't filed it yet, we'll show you how. And as I mentioned at the start of the presentation today, we will send you these slides next week. All of these links are live, and it will take you exactly where you need to go to file everything and look at all the resources. So beneficial ownership information, BOI, it's also called BOIR filings, are a result of a federal law, Corporation Transparency Act of 2020. As I mentioned earlier, LLCs can be owned by other LLCs, so you don't know who actually owns them. And people from certain foreign countries are not allowed to own LLCs in the United States. People who have had fraud litigation and been convicted of white collar crime sometimes aren't allowed to own businesses in the United States. So this is the way for the federal government to basically find out who is engaging in fraudulent business activity and or laundering money. That is nobody in this room, but they don't know that. Right? We don't know that there's not some Colville money laundering scheme happening at someone who is baking cupcakes. So everyone has to file. It is free. Like I mentioned, use the slides or ask us. If you look up BOI filing just on Google, the first 7 that come up, and one even says .org, and it's a government website, so it's not an org, Charge you. It literally takes, for one member LLC, takes 5 minutes. And there's a local accounting firm in Spokane that charges you $300. At the least, please we'll send you a screenshot and handout of how to do it if you want. But you have to file it annually, maybe if there's changes, but one time. And you need to provide information about everyone who's a beneficial owner. So anyone who owns 25% or more of the business, or someone who owns less than that but has control, which I feel like is a lot of family businesses. There's maybe the parents are passing it on. You see it a lot in like farming families where mom and dad still have a lot less of the ownership interest, but they still are in charge. And so any of those people, you have to provide their photo ID and an address. That's it. So also do it on a laptop or a desktop so you can upload things. I read something that said millennial and older folks, which I am Gen X, make all of their important purchases using a laptop or a desktop and not on their phones, and that Gen Z and younger does everything on their phone. But because you have to upload photo IDs in a way that is a little wonky with a bunch of logins on a government website, just do it on a laptop or a desktop or a tablet. It'll be easier. If you're an existing business, you're already an LLC, you have till March 21, 2025 to complete the filing. If you start your LLC, you have 90 days from the date of formation. So there's been litigation going on because people don't want to disclose. And I feel like if you're the business filing to not disclose who owns the business, maybe you should be investigated. And I'm sure that's happening, but there's been a litigation back and forth because there's big penalties associated with this, or there were. They've suspended the penalties, but the penalties were $500 a day for non-filing. So the penalties don't exist. They may enact the penalties after March 21. It's unclear. I literally have been going back and forth and giving everyone updates on BOI and following what's going on. We have a blog post we need to get on our website about it, but just get the filing done either way. There's no penalties enacted, but they will bring them back, and the law literally says $500 a day, which adds up incredibly fast, and it's coming from the government who can easily access your personal bank accounts. So let's talk about business licensing, my favorite thing. Ugh. Do I need a business license? Oh no, that was directed at my slides. So the short answer is yes. And this is the thing, we do a lot of meetings with people who want to start businesses who already have businesses who don't have a business license. And we always hear, well, my buddy says I don't have to have one. And then I usually ask questions about who their buddy is. Like, are they a business consultant? Have they ever run a successful business? I definitely have a former brother-in-law who always had a get-rich-quick scheme, and last I checked, he's not rich. So don't get advice from those folks about this. There is a free resource to get that advice, and it's the Department of Revenue's Business Licensing Wizard. Long answer, still yes, if any of the following apply. These are ors, not ands. So you're doing business using anything other than your full legal name. So if you are not Robin Haynes, just that out in business, I need a business license. You're doing business where you have to collect retail sales tax. If you're selling almost any kind of tangible product to someone, you have to collect sales tax. There's also some services where you have to collect sales tax. If you're painting a house, even if you're not providing the paint, you have to collect sales tax. So then you have to have a business license. If you make $12,000 or more in gross income, and again, this is an or, I think a lot of people just see the $12,000 one and they have a side gig and they're like, well, I don't make $12,000 on my cupcakes that I sell, but it's an or, not an and. If you have employees or are gonna hire employees within 90 days, also an or. If your business address is in most cities in the state, so your main business location, and for people working from home, it's your home. Colville, Chewelah, Deer Park, Newport, Spokane, Spokane Valley, Pullman, most of Eastern Washington. Colfax is a wild exception. You do not have to have a business license just because you work in Colfax. You might have to have one for other reasons in your business in Colfax, but just because you're in Colfax, you don't have to. But it is an outlier, and this actual link here, when you get the slides, it will tell you every city where you have to have a business license for the state of Washington. But the one we're in right now definitely requires it. The one our office is in requires it. And even nonprofits have to have business licenses. We have a business license. So what is doing business anyway? The easiest way I can say it is offering any goods or services for money. Literally anything. This is the definition from the Spokane City Municipal Code. Every city and town has basically the same definition, but it's, even the object to gain a benefit. Even if you're trying to sell something, you're again making candles and no one has bought one yet, but you're trying to sell things, you need a business license. So literally if you're doing anything other than working for someone else for money, the state of Washington and every city believes you are doing business. Applying for the business license is easy, but also unnecessarily complicated. You apply at the Department of Revenue. The reason I say it's unnecessarily complicated is because it asks you a lot of questions at the start of what kind of business are you running, what is the address? And so if you say you're running a marketing firm at your house, it still asks you a specific set of questions about certain industries that are heavily regulated. So if I say I'm doing marketing from my house, it'll also ask me if I have a salmon fishery, if I'm selling loose cigarettes, if I have lottery tickets. So I wish in the state of all the technology we have in Washington, we could kind of streamline that. So when I tell you that all I'm doing is cupcakes with a cottage license, that they don't ask if I also have a salmon fishery in the backyard or I'm selling timber. So if you are applying for that business license for the first time, there are some really good videos in the Department of Revenue. We have a really nice handout we can send to you as well. But if you're in there and you're like, why is it asking me about salmon fishery? We ask everybody. It's because there's really weird taxes related to that, but it's confusing. The cost of your license is going to depend on where your business is located. So if your business is within the city of Spokane, it's about $186 a year. It's a little cheaper up here. It's $19 a year in Colfax, so they don't have a city endorsement. The dollars always come from the city endorsement. It gets a little higher if you're hiring minors, and then certain industries, the license is a little more expensive depending on how high risk you are. If you're selling loose cigarettes, it costs more. You do have to renew your business license every year. It's not every calendar year, it's the calendar year from when your business started. And you get notifications from the Department of Revenue 60 days in advance for that one too. Some tips on when you're applying and or renewing. You're supposed to apply for your business license before you start doing business. Is anyone from the Department of Revenue looking for people doing business and filing reports? No. But when you realize you need to get one, it's a good time to apply. It does take about 10 business days when you apply online to actually get your business license in your email. You can apply by mail, especially if you have a language barrier. I know the business license application is in 30 languages, I think. But if for some reason you want to apply online or on paper and you just prefer to mail something to the state of Washington, it takes about 30 days to get your license. If you have a public-facing business, you have customers, your business license has to be displayed somewhere conspicuous, somewhere people can see it. If you're going to like farmers markets and stuff, just keep a copy with you because technically that's customer facing. If you are only working by yourself out of your house and no one's seeing it, you don't need to have it somewhere conspicuous. You may need multiple city endorsements. If you have, there's a pizza place that's in Colville and they have the same one in Chewelah or another branch of it, another chain of it. They would have endorsements for both cities. If you one-off work in another city, like you go do a market in Spokane for 2 days once a year, but you're based in Deer Park, you can get a temporary permit for that. You don't need to get multiple, but you can get all of them in one place. You don't need to go to multiple counties and multiple cities. Everything is in one place, which is really nice. I wish that both your LLC filing and your business license were in one place, but that would be too easy. And so you have to go to multiple places. If you're going to hire employees, especially minors, you need to get an endorsement on your business license, which you can fix online. They want you to do it no less than 90 days from the employee's start date. So if you're about to grow your business, I'm going to hire someone, add the endorsement. I think it's $10 for adult employees, and it might be $15 for minors. So if you think you're going to hire, you can amend your business license to add that. Not required for contractors. Well, independent contractors. Construction contractors who are employees still have to have that. The trade names, or the DBA. This is also where you get to register the trade name or DBA for your business if it's not your full legal name. You can register as many as you want. Some businesses have multiple lines of business. They're doing wholesale and retail, and they maybe have slightly different names for it. Or like we're SIMBA, the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance. So I own both of those trade names. And registering your trade name with the State of Washington Department of Revenue means no other business in the state of Washington is allowed to use that name. It's kind of a first step in protecting your intellectual property. It's $5 a year per name, and you can renew or add them at any time. And let's say you want to change your name, but you're not sure you want to change your LLC. You can have as many business names as you want. It doesn't have to be the same name as your LLC. A lot of people might have an LLC that is just your name, Alexis McLaughlin LLC, but her business is Opal's Cafe. So you are using a different name than the LLC, perfectly fine. Do it all in one place. All right, quiz time. Do you need a business license? I'm gonna make my staff in the room handle this question. So everyone can take a look at these. Don't answer out loud yet, but first one is you're selling t-shirts online from home and your home's in Colville. Second one is I do remodel services and my business is located in Addie. I'm gonna make $11,500 in gross income selling cookies in Chewelah. I have a food truck only 2 weekends a year in the city of Spokane. I don't know what we're doing with the food truck the rest of the year. And then the extra credit one, I do graphic design for my home in Colfax. I do business using my full legal name, which is weird. I have no employees. I make $10,000 in gross income per calendar year. Grace, what do you think about selling t-shirts online from your home in Colville? Yes. Alexis, what about remodeling services and your business is located?
Yes.
Perfect. I mean, I kind of told you at the start of the session that these were all going to be yes. So I'm not going to put everyone on the spot, but I will go through the answers and why. We're here for the drama. So I sell t-shirts online and my home is in Colville. Yes, because you have a business in Colville and they require a city license. And you have to do sales tax because t-shirts are something you have to collect sales tax on. Home remodel services. My business is located in Addie. Yes. So Addie does not require a specific city license. It's technically unincorporated. But contractors have to have a business license in Washington. They also have to have all kinds of other licenses that we'll talk about. And it wasn't clear from the question, so you may be located in Addie, but there's probably not enough remodel business in Addie for you to, I think there's 500 people there, to actually have a successful business. So you might be going to Colville or Chewelah or Oroville or fill in the blank. So you may be working somewhere else. You're $11,500 selling cookies, farmers markets. Yes, because you're in Chewelah, they require a city license. And prepared food, cookies, baked goods, anything at a restaurant, when you go to the warm deli at the grocery store, you're paying tax on that. So there's sales tax on that. There is not sales tax on the farmer's market when you're buying produce. So you have this food truck and you're in the city of Spokane only 2 weekends. Yes, you're collecting sales tax for prepared food. City of Spokane requires a license. If you truly are only ever in Spokane 2 weekends of the year and you don't run your food truck anywhere else in Washington State, let's say you're in Coeur d'Alene, then you may only need a temporary license for that weekend and those 2 weekends in Spokane, and that is $60. So extra credit. This is the only no I could even find. I spent a lot of time on the licensing wizard. So Colfax doesn't have a city license. You're using your full legal name. You have no employees and you're making less than the $12,000. So only if all of those statements are true do you not need a business license. So pretty rare, very unlikely. And the wizard will literally tell you what you need and what it's going to cost in advance if you're looking that, or if you're looking to add locations, what that extra endorsement looks like. Other licenses. Excuse me, I'm going a little hoarse here from speaking. So I mentioned construction contractors. So everyone needs a business license except for that strange business in Colfax that probably doesn't exist. You may need other licenses depending on what you're doing. If you are a construction contractor, you have to have a business license. It's $132.60 for the year. You have to have a $250,000 insurance policy and a bond. It varies. It's up to $30K for general contractors. It's more if you kind of do a little of everything. Washington is very strict about construction contractors. SIMBA has an L&I contract where we provide resources around that. And some of the stories we hear are if people leave their construction advertising places, like they'll leave business cards, if they don't have their contractor number on there and they happen to leave it at the home of a L&I employee who's in the reporting part of the department, they have to report it. So definitely get that you cannot advertise for services, do anything as a construction contractor in the state of Washington. And the fines are really severe and they're way more than $132. And while it's $250,000 in insurance and a bond up to $30,000, the cost of the insurance and the bond is way less than that. So save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of fines and penalties. Food establishment permits. If you have a restaurant, a food truck, you're doing a pop-up at a farmer's market, you need either a permanent or temporary food establishment permit. Also, if you're catering, you run a commercial kitchen. Those are from your regional health district. Washington State actually adopted rules so they're the same license or same permit in each health district and they can be transferable, which is nice. It was not that way until a couple of years ago, but you'll need to find out. I will say the cost of a food establishment permit varies by the kinds of food you are making and how risky it is viewed. So if you're selling raw fish, sushi restaurant, your license costs a lot more because there's a lot more potential risk and they're gonna investigate you a little more likely. But if you're selling lattes, prepared cookies, things like that, it's a cheaper license. And there's literally a list of the foods that are less risky. So like pepperoni pizza at a farmer's market is considered low risk, but sausage pizza is high risk. So it's like category 1, category 2. So it costs more for more toppings. Cottage licenses, we hear about this one a lot. It is for home bakers and people preparing shelf-stable foods like custom spice blends. You can make them at your home gets inspected. There's very strict rules about what kind of refrigeration you have, whether you have pets in your home, how clean your home is. You cannot prepare anything that has to be refrigerated. And cottage licenses are really hard to get. So if you see someone who has one, there's a baker in Spokane called House on a Hill Bakery that we love. She has one. It is like the gold star. I mean, you have this immaculate kitchen. You should eat anything from there. So it is hard. You can get licenses to bake and sell at farmers markets if you're running like a commercial kitchen, and that is a much cheaper process. Food processors, my favorite one. So if you cook, bake, dehydrate, freeze dry, or otherwise prepare any food at a fixed location at your home or otherwise commercial kitchen, in the back of your restaurant, because you're also selling things other places, at a warehouse, you have to have a food processor license, which is from the Washington State Department of Agriculture, and all these links go to where these licenses are. Food processing includes repackaging bulk foods or transferring purchased foods from one package to another. So if you are selling at your kid's baseball game and you bought the giant bag of Skittles and then you at Costco and you put it into tiny bags, you're technically a food processor. And it applies for people selling directly to consumers and also business to business, B2B. So freeze-dried candy is apparently a thing that I didn't know about until very recently. You have to have a license because you're taking candy in one form, doing something else to it, and then repackaging it. So, and the food processor license is pretty inexpensive. Food trucks need a number of permits, not just your one from the health district, but the Department of Labor and Industry requires that. And they are strict and it takes forever to get an inspection this time of year. If you get your inspection done when it's not food truck season, you're great. Commercial scales, if you're selling anything by volume or weight, food at a farmer's market, if you're selling like places where you get, you can refill like your soaps and stuff, you have to have a commercial scale registration. It's very inexpensive, it's very easy, and someone just checks your scale to make sure that everything is being done correctly. Tax ID numbers, EINs, they're the same thing. EINs and tax IDs, it's just the social security number for your business. They are optional for sole proprietors, but I recommend them because if you don't use it, you're giving your social security number out to people, and just don't. And not because someone's gonna scam you, but There's so much hacking and fraud and emails getting compromised. It's just safer just to have your social security number, or excuse me, EIN. And particularly if you are a sole proprietor that has employees, because you're going to be issuing them either W-2s or 1099s if they're a contractor, and your social security number is going to be on there. And we definitely don't want a disgruntled employee giving people your social. If you have an LLC, corporation, any other formal structure, you have to have one because it's a separate entity from you. This link here is for the IRS. EIN is another one like BOI. If you type into Google, apply for tax ID number from the IRS, the first 10 that come up are either people who want to pay that are not fraudulent, and then people who would like your personal identification and are fraudulent. And it takes forever to get to the IRS one, so just use the IRS one. It is free. It takes 10 minutes, max. You can apply for it as the owner of a business or someone who's been authorized to do it. Some people have their lawyer or accountant do it, their child, fill in the blank. You need it to open bank accounts. You'll use it to file your taxes, issue W-2s and 1099s. Anytime you're signing a contract. I know we issue 1099s to Vexing Media because we hire them as much as we can. So we have their EIN on file securely. The beauty of an EIN is you can't use it to open like a credit card or take out loans or do anything fraudulent, and they're not going to let you open a bank account without proving you own that business, and I don't know why you'd open a bank account for that. So you can't get access to things with it. There's not a list of them though, so some tips on filing an EIN, and I'm sorry this is cut off. We'll make sure when we send the slides off that it's not cut off. You have to do it after you get your business license and or after you have your LLC, depending on if you're a sole proprietor or an LLC or other structure. You want to have the date of formation handy. Date of formation is either the date your LLC started or the date you got your business license. You will need the social security number or ITIN for the person applying, which is also why you really only want to use that IRS website link, because if you are using a scammer, you're giving your social security number to somebody for no good reason. Again, truly the IRS link, lots of scammers. And then this is a personal story. Use a device where you can save your PDF because they give you a PDF immediately with the EIN. Do not lose your EIN letter that's issued immediately because there's no way to look it up. There are only 2 ways to retrieve your EIN if you have lost it. And you usually don't lose it until you're trying to file your taxes. One is to call the IRS, which if you've ever had to call the IRS for any reason or any other government entity, it can take you 10 minutes or it can take you 3 hours. And nobody wants that phone call, and I feel bad for the people answering phones in those places. Or the other way you can do it is to write a letter to the IRS, which is what I did, to ask for it, and then wait 5 to 6 weeks for them to send it to you. So whatever you do, save it, print it, save it, write it down. You don't have to give the letter to prove anyone, you just have to know the number. The most critical thing to not use. The other little thing I didn't put on these slides about the EIN is it is an online application. It is not a chat bot. It's just doing whatever else you're doing online. But it's only available between, I believe, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Monday through Friday. So you cannot apply for it on the weekend. In my former career, I used to help people apply for them when they were starting their businesses because these are people who had existing businesses and money and just didn't want to deal with it. And I would think, I'm just going to get my work done on my Saturday morning with my coffee. And you literally can't. I do not know why it's set up like that. And I will say I've been doing EIN applications for probably 20 years and the form has not changed at all. So I don't know why it's only those hours. I don't know what's happening at the IRS. And then, I know why this is. We shortened these up on my laptop, but this is not my laptop. That's why they're not showing up. I will get you a better one, Tom. EINs, tax ID numbers, are required to open a business bank account. They're not going to open one with your social. All right, working with family and friends. We love to do it until we don't love to do it. Mixing family and friends in business. I've had the same conversation with people where the family members are sitting together at the start of the business, and I kind of go through the same spiel. They're like, we're never going to fight. I was like, okay, well, I don't know what your childhood was like, but I have 3 sisters, so And I would never open a business with any of them. But protect yourself and save your relationships is my main takeaway for this. But super common for friends and family to open and operate businesses together, right? There's so many family-owned businesses, especially like in Colville, where we are right now. Some that have been around for generations. Here's something. Family and friends cannot volunteer for for-profit businesses in Washington State. Literally no one can volunteer for a for-profit business in Washington State. We see a lot of posts on social media sometimes with for-profit businesses saying, well, we're looking for a summer volunteer. And because we work with NLI, but we are not a reporting agency, we're just an education provider, we always send a message like, hey, not telling you how to run your business, but please take this post down. Because if someone from LNI sees it, you might get in trouble. So what does that mean? If you have a family member working for you, they either have to be treated as an owner or you have to pay them. And pay them as an employee or a contractor. If they're doing anything for your business that you'd have to pay a stranger to do. Easiest way, especially if it's your spouse, is kind of just make them a co-owner. So if they're hauling your camera equipment or helping you set up a farmer's market table or doing something like that, running your social media. I use that as kids running the social media. I'm just aging myself when I say that, but that's something you have to pay someone to do. I know a social media manager in Spokane charges about $3,000 a month. You don't just have to pay them $3,000 enough, but you have to pay them for their time. So other than a spouse, again, sole proprietorships can't be co-owners. So if you are making your brother co-owner of your business, there's faces in the crowd, then give them an ownership percentage. It doesn't have to be big. It can be 4%. And then they get 4% of profits and losses at the end of the year instead of paying them and filing taxes. So again, if it's any work of any kind, they have to be classified as an employer or an independent contractor, paid at least minimum wage for every hour worked if they're an employee. So you also have to track their hours, pay their payroll taxes, possibly get them workers' compensation, pay into the Washington Cares funds, and a few other numerous things. If you want to talk at a meeting with any of SIMBA staff about workers and payroll and all those other things, we're happy to have a meeting outside of this, but just kind of high level. Any donations made by your family is either taxable income or a loan. So if someone gives you a gift to start your business, mom and dad want to give you $10,000. I don't know whose mom that is. It's not my mom and dad, but they want to give you a gift of $10,000 to start your business. It's technically income for your business, or it's a loan. You can do a loan at low to no interest for a family, and you can decide to pay them back 10 years on when you're there. But this is how the state of Washington wants you to treat it. Is someone out investigating this? No. Here's where it comes up. If you are running a small restaurant in a southeastern Washington small town, and you want your kids to have some responsibility, don't let that be them pouring coffee when they're 10 years old at your restaurant. Because what if your child spills that coffee on a patron or falls and breaks that coffee pot and there's an incident? LNI is going to come investigate. And not only are you going to be fined for whatever injury or issue, but you're going to be fined for illegally employing a minor, probably not paying them, and all kinds of other things. So this is always I'm not here to tell you how to run the business. I'm telling you the rules. You run your business how you want to run your business. We're not advising you on what's best for you, but it is a huge risk. And especially if you're running a public-facing business, there are people who work for LNI and other departments in the state who, right, they have to shop, they go to farmers markets, and they are obligated as almost mandatory reporters in some spaces. And these things, and even talking about operating agreements, it's always when something goes wrong. So protect yourself from the going wrong. Some more things. Minor children have to be paid to work for your parents' business. And this, we work with, especially in Spokane, like second-generation immigrant-owned businesses, primarily in food industry. And we've all been to restaurants where the young child, who's a native English speaker citizen, is answering the phones. Washington doesn't love that either. So culturally, it can be confusing. They need to be paid at least minimum wage for every hour worked. 14 and 15-year-olds can work in Washington for less than minimum wage. It's like 75%. So it's, I think, $14-ish right now. But examples of kids running your business, right? Cleaning your store, having the social media account. If you want them to have responsibility, just give them chores at home like we all had growing up. So again, even if you're hiring your own child, you have to follow federal labor laws. There's really strict rules on hours worked. And one of the rules that's really interesting that comes up, especially in Eastern Washington, we have a lot of people who homeschool their children. So those kids can work too, like a kid going to a public school, but they're only allowed to work the hours that the kids in public school are allowed to work. So if you're a homeschooled child and it's your week off, but the local public school is in session, your child can't work that week, whether they're working for you or for someone else. I think that one is always an interesting catch. If you're not running an agricultural family farm, children under 14 really can't work in Washington. There's a court order option, and that's usually for an emancipated child who's definitely not working in their family business anyway. And again, children can really never be independent contractors. You have to pay them as employees because independent contractor implies you have the ability to enter into a contract, and you're gonna have a hard time winning a fight that a 15-year-old could enter into a contract with their parents. Thank you. I thought it was funny too, Grace. Another little fun caveat to think about is maybe your husband is not a co-owner of your business. He has a separate job, he's doing his own thing, he doesn't know how to do your job. I don't know a lot of couples who have the same job, so I just feel like that's really common. Washington is a community property state. It's going to presume that all property earned or received during a marriage is property of the marital community, barring prenups and some other agreements that you're going to get from a family law attorney. But just because your spouse is not technically a legal owner of a business doesn't mean they have an interest in income you've made during the marriage and the value of your business if you get divorced. So if you're opening a business or if you think divorce is in the realm, I definitely highly recommend you talk to a family law attorney if you do truly want to keep those as separate things. There are documents you can sign while you're married or handle in your divorce, but some people get surprised by this. Let's save some surprises. So some annual things you have to do for your businesses, regardless of structure. Every year, you have to renew that business license, no matter what structure you're in. As long as you're running your business. You close your business, obviously you shut it down. You also have to file a report, possibly pay, sometimes you don't owe money, for your federal taxes. There are state taxes. We have a great video that we can share with you on filing your state business taxes. And our next training session for the School of Business is about business finances, so more on that. But that is going to vary depending on the kind of your business and how much money you make. Sometimes it's monthly. Restaurants are always monthly. So most people are quarterly for small businesses. Some people are annually. You'll know that from the Department of Revenue. If you're an LLC, you've got to renew that business license and you've got to file your annual report, And you have to have that annual meeting with yourself. You can do it more than once. And obviously it's much easier to have a meeting with minutes and notice with more than one owner. A couple of other things that may come up. You need to do that BOI filing. It was initially annually. Now it's only one time, and then if something changes. You add an owner, you change your address. The amendment is also free, and that link gives you a link to the Q&A of exactly how to do it and where to do it. If at any time you change your business address, your registered agent, your ownership changes, you add an owner, you lose an owner, you need to change that with the Department of Revenue. There's a small processing fee for some of the changes, but not all of them, so it depends on which one you're doing. Generally, within 30 to 60 days is ideal for that. If your LLC changes address, registered agents, or owners, you need to file an amended annual report, currently $10. Again, 30, 60 days. I always tell people if you're close to your renewal of your LLC, just wait. If you plan to hire employees and you don't have any yet, you need to get that Department of Revenue employee endorsement. And if you're going to do business in a city just on a limited basis, maybe you're doing farmers market, Shakespeare in the Park in Seattle for the summer, you're an actor. You might need a business license for that, but just for that time period. It may just be a temporary license, which is nice. So some resources, some Q&A, then everyone can have treats and go home. The Washington State Department of Revenue's business licensing wizard is at that link. It'll tell you what kind of license you need, what it looks like, how much it'll cost. If you want information generally about LLCs, how to file, what they are, what it looks like, it's actually a really nice guide at the Secretary of State. Another time with the magic link to apply for the EIN from the IRS. If you haven't applied for one, please just get it from the IRS link. Again, you don't want to give your information out to people, and don't pay $300 for something that takes 5 minutes. If you have questions about paying family members, we actually have copies of this in the room, but there's an L&I guide to who you have to pay if you're running a family business and how you pay them. There's a guide to employing minors from L&I. This link for BOI filing information is on FinCEN. It tells you how to do it, when to do it, what you need, and it is the location where you do it. And then there's a ton of Q&As because there has been litigation going back and forth for some time. But as of today, and truly it could change anytime because they haven't got all the way up to the Supreme Court yet. We're in the 5th Circuit, I think. As of today, you have to file by late March if you already have an existing business. And again, it's just informational. Who owns the business, where's the business located, and a copy of a photo ID. What if you want help from us? You can schedule a one-on-one consultation for free with us. We can meet with you in person. We can travel if you're outside of where we're located in Spokane, but we work in 13 to 15 Eastern Washington counties. We can come to you. We can hop on Zoom. There's just a really short form that we use to assign you to the right person. If you're talking to someone about social media marketing, it's not me. If you're talking about these compliance things, it's probably me. You can attend a group training session like you all are today. We've got them all listed on our events pages as well. If you missed something, you want to learn more about something else, we have a YouTube channel with both professionally produced videos from our friends at Vexing and then some less professionally produced videos from us from Zooms. Still good. The editing isn't as great. But they're on our YouTube channel and it's free, and there's literally a business training playlist. And I think there's 12 videos on there, including the small business wellness exam we did with WSMA last year. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We do run L&I tips on there, event information, fun stuff occasionally. You can subscribe to our monthly newsletter. It comes out once a month. There is always a business tip at the end. The pro tip about our newsletter is at the top there's these lovely links. So if you don't read my executive director letter, which will make me sad, but I will never know, you can just click to business tip or click to grant information or event information and go where you want to go. That was a whole lot. Questions from anyone in the room or anyone online? Or we're all overwhelmed. Like I said, we'll be sending an email out sometime next week. We will give you the slides as a PDF, and you'll be able to click on any of the links, get the resource guides, take any of the information with you.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sometimes I go out of the area to, say, photograph an event, but I do all the processing and delivery of files from my Spokane space. Yep. Do I need a temporary business license to be taking event photos in Seattle?
Great question. No, generally, because you're traveling to do stuff, but you're not doing the selling right there, okay. Right? You're processing, you're giving people other things in other locations. And if it's one-off and you need to pay some City of Seattle sales tax potentially, because if you were delivering, I know you make prints as well. Mm-hmm. If you were delivering prints to Seattle, the one-time filing on your state tax return for the Seattle sales tax, which is higher. Okay. But otherwise, no, good question. Okay. And related to that, like if you're selling on an online platform like an Etsy or an Amazon Marketplace or a fill in the blank, those folks already collect all of those regional taxes for you, so you don't have to get licenses everywhere you're going. Anything else from anyone online or otherwise, even staff? No?
So, photographers often help each other, not as volunteers, but often trade time. So how would that be?
The Department of Revenue might not love it because you're technically volunteering for each other. Are they going to find out about it? right? So technically, yes, you should be paying each other maybe as contractors, but perhaps you're giving each other some in-kind services.
Right. Okay.
And maybe even giving an in-kind receipt to each other might be the best way to go.
Oh, okay.
Good question. All right, well, thank you so much. Folks that are here, we have treats. Take some with you. And our next session is what date, Alexis?
The 24th of
March
March.
24th. It is at the Cheney Library. We're going to have probably some catering from Feast there, so there'll be good food. That will be run by a CPA named Amber Jasmine, and she's going to answer most, if not all, of your questions about small business finances, both, profit and loss statements, cash flows, what kind of taxes I file, when I file, what can I deduct, which is always the magic question for every kind of business. That is also available by Zoom. You don't have to go in person. Session 3 is in April. It is in Colfax, and that is marketing, web design, SEO. Session 4 is in Clarkston, also on Zoom. That one is for business planning and goal setting for your business. We're finalizing a speaker due part of it, and then I'll talk about SIMBA's resources around that as well. Alexis is running our social media marketing SEO training. And then it's just not public yet, we're gonna do an extra credit session in Grant County. And it'll just be the high points of the 4 sessions. So if you just want a really digested version of the key things, that's gonna happen. I don't know if it's gonna be in Ephrata or Moses Lake yet, and that will be in May, and the Clarkston one is in May as well. And if you want free help on any of the topics of any of the sessions, fill out that intake form. If you're here, we'll give you the form to meet with us. And then we'll get it scheduled and help you with whatever your business needs. Thank you so much for your time.